The Dwemer, also known as the Deep Elves, mysteriously disappeared around 3,500 years before the events of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. And they left behind a rather generous parting gift, an entire civilization's worth of ruins. Now, these ruins are already difficult enough to deal with. Between the automatons, the traps, and the general tendency of Dwemer architecture to feel mildly hostile to human life, clearing them is no small task. But, and this is the true danger of these ruins, they are even harder to pronounce.
Did you spot the dwarven ruins up there? Mizenvassel, Vinshaft, and Mizenshalift. Good thing the dwarves disappeared and stopped naming things.
Defeating Dagoth, stopping Mehrunes Dagon, and taking down Alduin the World Eater are all impressive achievements, but something tells me that whenever the Nerevarine, the hero of Kvatch, or the Dovahkiin had to ask for directions to a Dwemer ruin, and then actually say its name out loud, that was the moment things got difficult. Well, perhaps not the hero of Kvatch. Cyrodiil is lacking Dwemer ruins after all. Anyway, let's fix that. By the end of this, you should feel about as comfortable with Dwemer names as Drarain Thalis is in her pillow fort. Now, a small caveat before we begin. If you were hoping to walk away from this with a working knowledge of Dwemeris, the Dwemer language, I will have to disappoint you. We simply do not have enough reliable material. Not in the in-game lore, not in developer commentary, and not even in the extended, semi-canonical sources. So the goal here is not to speak Dwemeris as the Dwemer once did. The goal is much more practical. To look at a Dwemer ruin on the map and say its name the way a reasonably confident Tamrielic native of the 2nd, 3rd or 4th era might. Later in the video we will also take a look at a voice line from the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, which is probably the closest thing we have to actual spoken Dwemeris. To get there, we're going to approach this from 4 different angles. First, the in-game written lore. Then, out-of-game sources, such as developer comments. After that, a fan theory that offers a useful framework for thinking about Dwemer names. And finally, and most importantly, the in-game voice lines themselves. We will go through every Dwemer ruin name that has actually been spoken out loud across the mainline games, and use those as a foundation to build a consistent approximation. From there, we can fill in the gaps. And at the end, there will be a full run-through of all Dwemer ruin names, spoken out loud, in a way that at least sounds like it belongs in Tamriel. So let's start with the in-game written lore. ESO introduces a book titled How to Pronounce Dwemer Words, which sounds, at first glance, extremely promising. In fact, it sounds like exactly what this entire video is trying to accomplish. So, naturally, I'm going to read it to you, verbatim, unabridged. How to Pronounce Dwemer Words, by Amadri Drevin, student. There are many different thoughts on the pronunciation of Dwemer words. I just sat through a discussion with my master and several other scholars. As always, learned scholars disagree, a lot. They also love the sound of their own voices, especially when it comes to dwarven nomenclature. After sifting through the Dwemer words passed down to us through history, most notably the names of places, and sitting through that long-winded scholarly review, I have distilled the knowledge to provide a guide on Dwemer pronunciation for other aspiring dwarven scholars. How to pronounce Dwemer words. First, inhale deeply. Second, drink a full glass of mead or Cyrodiilic brandy, whichever you prefer. Inhale deeply again. Put 4 to 7 smooth rounded pebbles in your mouth. Attempt to say any word you like, but leave out most of the vowels and add extra consonants. Emphasize either the 3rd or 4th syllable in an exaggerated manner, even if the word only has 2 syllables. Congratulations, you have successfully pronounced a Dwemer word. Right, that was not especially helpful. Entertaining in its own way, but not exactly the breakthrough we were hoping for. So, having exhausted the official in-game guidance, let's turn to a slightly more spiritual source. And by that, I mean we're going to send a desperate prayer to the patron saint of every Elder Scrolls fan who wanted more lore, Michael Kirkbride. Surely, at some point, he must have said something clear and definitive about Dwemer pronunciation. And technically he has. Unfortunately, in typical Kirkbride fashion, the result is not clarity, but additional uncertainty. The one concrete thing I could find is his take on how to pronounce the word Dwemer itself. Personally, I've been saying it the way most people do, and the way most official voice actors say it, Dwemer. But according to Kirkbride, Dwemer, the dwarves, is Dwemer. means deep folk. So we didn't even get that right. That said, I'm going to stick with Dwemer, simply because it's the version most players will recognize, and the one used almost universally in Skyrim.
Dwemer.
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 Dwemer. Dwemer.
Dwemer.
Dwemer.
In fact, there is exactly one exception I could find in all of the voice lines in Skyrim. The only character in Skyrim who uses Kirkbride's official pronunciation is Falion, the wizard in Morthal.
I have met Daedra and Dwemer, and everything in between, and I know enough to see a vampire where others would see a man.
Now, Falion claims to have met Dwemer, plural, which raises a few questions. If he met only one, he could be referring to Yeagrum Bogarn, the last living Dwemer, the same one whose hidden voice line I covered in the previous video. As far as we know, Yeagrum could still be alive by the time of Skyrim. But if Falion really did meet multiple Dwemer, then we have absolutely no idea where or how. Of course, it's also entirely possible that he is simply lying, but the fact that he's the only one in Skyrim to pronounce the word differently, perhaps in the way a Dwemer might have told him to, does make the whole thing at least a little suspicious. Moving on from Kirkbride, there is at least one more semi-official comment worth looking at. Shortly after becoming lore master for ESO in 2019, Leamon Tuttle, also known as Lemon Turtle, was asked whether he had learned how to pronounce all of the more difficult lore terms, including names like Bthungthumz. His answer was, "It takes some imagination, but yeah, I'm pretty good at it. People here laugh at me sometimes because I'm constantly urging them to remove vowels. Insanely difficult words make things a little tougher on our actors, though, so we try not to force that sort of thing on them too often. Their job is hard enough."
The Dwemer called it Falzar Doomdeen. Saying that name took less practice than many other Dwemer place names. Give it a try.
So, even at an official level, pronunciation seems to be handled somewhat loosely. And that's about as far as the available guidance goes. So, before I move on to the voice lines themselves, let's take a quick look at one theory from the community. The Dwemer Abjad theory. Now, an Abjad is a type of writing system where only consonants are written out, while the vowels are left for the reader to infer. Some real-world languages like Arabic or Hebrew use systems like this, sometimes also impure abjads, meaning they include at least some hints for vowels, either through additional letters or optional markings. The idea here is that Dwemer writing might work in a similar way. So instead of representing the full spoken word, what we see in-game, those long consonant-heavy names, could just be a reduced written form, like an impure abjad, mostly consonants with just a few vowels here and there. So something like Bthungthumz then wouldn't actually be pronounced exactly as it appears, but instead acts more like a framework, where the vowels have been omitted or only partially represented. So it could be pronounced like Nechuleftingeth, for example. The obvious limitation is that we don't know which vowels are supposed to go back in, so any attempt at reconstruction is at best an educated guess. Still, as a general guideline, this theory is quite useful. Don't read Dwemer names as complete words, but as an incomplete representation of something spoken. Before we move on to the in-game voice lines from the titles most of us are probably more familiar with, there is one earlier example worth looking at, and it comes from the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard. In that game, the main character, Cyrus, encounters a sealed Dwemer ruin called Bthungthumz. And instead of forcing the door open, he does something much more interesting. He speaks a phrase in Dwemeris. The line functions as a kind of activation phrase. Cyrus learns it from a book on Dwemer lore, and when he recites it at the entrance, the door opens.
Shabbos, work, stu inda, bathark, word she amrate.
That sounded about as crunchy and ancient as the Dwemer themselves. Let's try that again, with a bit more clarity.
Shabbos, work, stu inda, bathark, word she amrate.
Now, this is one of the very few examples of something resembling Dwemeris being spoken out loud. And while Cyrus himself is obviously not a Dwemer, the fact that his pronunciation is good enough to activate an ancient Dwemer mechanism suggests that it is at least close enough to the real thing, which makes this one of the closest reference points we have for how Dwemer words might actually sound. And interestingly, it's not all that different from how we tend to pronounce these names ourselves, at least most of the time, except for one detail toward the end. The word is written as Amzrte, but what we actually hear is
Amrate.
the Z is effectively silent, and we get an extra vowel sound between the R and the T, which to be fair is very much in line with how people tend to smooth out Dwemer names in practice. But the missing Z is more difficult to explain. Is it always silent, only in certain combinations, or is it just a one-off decision by the voice actor? As far as I could find, there are no other examples where a Z is dropped completely like this. So for now, it remains inconclusive. Which brings us to the next step, looking at Dwemer ruin names as they are actually pronounced in the later games. So let's start with the ruins on Bardenfell.
I employed a fascinating helical boring technique invented by the dwarves of Arkingthand.
Bthungthumz. You can find a sonance generator there, after you deal with the steam trap.
The inversion conduit. I saw one in Galome Deus, right before I barely escaped from those damned vampires.
Well, the Zalkensul cave network strays very close to an ancient dwarven stronghold called Zonchant.
I've told you more than enough. The item you seek is deep in the ruins of Nachuleft.
I hope you're suitably prepared. Nachulef Tinth promises to be quite a challenge. We were looking for the ruins of Barms Amshend beneath Mournhold when we came across a tiny city inside a clockwork globe. Wait, it's you. You helped Kirith and I in Bthanyel.
Dres raiders are going to the entrance of Bthungthumz to ambush the Lalu guards.
Amazing. Do you know what this is? This is Rekugams.
Hello. I am Proteus, Kemel Z Security Oversight Construct.
I suppose if you're intent on looking for the staff, there's a chance they might be in Mazulft yet.
Finally, the vault of Muvnak. The Wrathstone must be through there.
The power of Mazinshaleft is mine. Be gone from here!
Gallus and Mercer spent the better part of a month infiltrating Erkenthand, but the dwarves had protected the place far too well.
Hey, you're the one who killed Elaine Defont up in Ralbethar.
Under deep, below the dark, the hidden keep, Tower Mzark.
Night Hollow Keep is down in Blackreach, east of the Library of Arksand.
I did say I'd sell you the map to Betharzel, but I'm not sure I could determine a fair price.
Look to the west, at the foot of the mountain. The dwarven ruins there. Bthungthumz.
And the excavations into Nachuanzel are dangerous.
Avanshanzel. Take it to Avanshanzel. You must take it back.
Ovtand, the point of puncture, of first entry, of the tapping.
Nonsense. A few Dwemer spiders will pop out, we kill them, and the treasure of Kagramez will be ours.
Here we are, Nachardak. The book we're after is right inside that dome.
The Dwemer called it Falzar Doomdeen. Saying that name took less practice than many other Dwemer place names. Give it a try.
I'll find Lyris and we'll be right behind you. Remember, Coggenthams is southeast of Dusktown.
In Chuthinkarst. It's a mouthful, right? I sometimes wonder if the real reason the dwarves are all gone is because they choked and swallowed their tongues trying to say their own names.
They're actually runoff from an old Dwemer furnace in Alduns.
Volenfell is where the famous dwarven hammer fell, yes? Mike wonders if where the hammer fell is a better name.
My dear Clathscar, he only wanted us to be together. But once I was in the machine, I could no longer express my feelings.
Hands off! That's Imperial property! Rozik's wheel shall be your grave.
Many dwarven religious texts refer to a Dwemer site called Mitharnaz.
There's a Dwemer ruin outside town, Bithzark. Naramo went there to dig up relics.
When last we spoke, we had explored the dwarven ruin of Mizenelt.
I offered my help because I suspected that the ruins of Mizendine were down here, but I never expected such powerful defenses.
A huge metal man. Nischaleft is its name. This one read about it in books.
You'll be on your way to Zthinganaz soon, yes?
It was that dwarven power core you got for us in Zithganthaz.
And here we are, Raganthar.
Much like in real-world languages, you may have noticed that certain building blocks start to repeat across different Dwemer ruin names. A linguist might refer to these as morphemes, recurring units that carry meaning or function within a word. Now, we obviously don't have enough information to fully decode Dwemeris, but we can look at these repeating elements and treat them as consistent sound patterns. So let's go through a few of the ones we've already heard in the previous clips. These will serve as a foundation for later, when we try to construct a reasonable approximation for the pronunciation of Dwemer ruins that were never spoken out loud in any official voice line. Zel, meaning city, possibly also underground or domain of the Dwemer.
Avanshanzel.
Vatharsel.
Kemelzi. Nachuanzel.
Bthar, meaning allied, also bound, bond.
Vatharsel.
Bthungthumz.
Rald Bthar.
Arkung, meaning give, gift, grace.
Arkingthand.
Bthungthumz.
Ark, Anch, meaning were broken, had perished. Shared idea of something fallen, materially or spiritually.
Avanshanzel.
Mazanchent.
Shend, meaning path, passage.
Bamzam Shend.
Mazanchent.
Thand, translated in one place as steam gardens, but probably only garden, hall, home, or domain.
Arkingthand.
Erkenthand.
Chard, meaning stones, bones.
Nachardak.
Kagr, Kagran, meaning tone, music.
Kagramez.
So with those building blocks in mind, we can now start to make educated guesses about how the remaining Dwemer ruins, those we've never actually heard spoken out loud, might sound. Which means it's finally time for a full compilation of Dwemer ruin names, or at least all the ones we know of, or all the ones I found in my research. I might have missed some, please don't kill me in the comments. If you listen to this on a loop while you sleep, you might wake up speaking fluent Dwemeris, or your ears might fall off. Either way, enjoy.
Left.
Alduns.
Ofthand.
Arkenthamz. Arkenthamzfang.
Arkingthand.
Bthungthumz.
Oxan. Avanshanzel.
Bamzam Shend.
Bethamez.
Bethanshend.
Bethanio. Bethang. Vatharsel.
Bthungthumz.
Bethuand.
Bthungthumz. Bthunzel.
Bisak. Druskashti.
Indusel. Falbathaz.
Falzar Doomdeen.
Galome Deus.
Endor Stardoms.
Erkenthand.
Kagelthar. Kagranzel.
Coggenthamz.
Kagramez.
Kemelzi.
Karaka. Klaskar.
Cathendral.
Mitharnas.
Muran.
Mazanelt.
Mesinchaleft.
Mazanj.
Mazanchent.
Mazak. Mizandine.
Mizathumz.
Mizulft.
Mazuleft.
Mazooms. Mazund.
Nachardak. Nachardak.
Nachardums.
Nenshu Duabthar.
Nachuanzel.
Nachuleft. Nachulef Tinkth.
Nachordams.
Enchuthinkarst.
Nizjaleft.
Odrasol. Raganthar.
Rald Bthar.
Raelad Makai.
Razik's wheel.
Rakadak.
Rakindaleft.
Rakugans.
Akoftsel.
Rakund.
Rakunzelft.
Santaki.
Turainalal.
Vodkend.
Vault of Muvnak.
Vemenal.
Volenfell.
Ilzun.
Sethinganas.
And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any ideas or suggestions for what I should cover next, feel free to let me know. If you're looking for something else to watch, there's also a video linked in the description that I posted on another channel a while ago. It's a critical look at self-improvement, with quite a bit of historical context. It has nothing to do with Elder Scrolls, but still very much about trying to understand where things come from. In any case, thanks for watching. And to anyone who left a kind comment or a like on the previous video, thanks again. I did not expect that kind of response, and I really appreciate it. To have so many people resonate with a silly little video I made is just weird in a good way.